We're in Ulaanbaatar, capital of Mongolia. With the end of communism, this Asian state's economy collapsed. Unemployment and alcoholism are rife. We discovered orphans huddling against hot water pipes in underground holes, along with cockroaches. Why are you homeless? Where are your parents? This boy says that he doesn't even know where his parents are. They moved from the countryside when he was only 4 and he got lost on the road. There are thousands of homeless from broken families. In winter, the city of Ulaanbaatar can get colder than the North Pole. These boys tell me that there have been horrible accidents in the past, sleeping down in these holes up close to the water pipes. And they say that sometimes these junction boxes burst and the homeless people sleeping down here are boiled alive. These lost boys are a symptom of a society in turmoil. Mongolia is struggling to transform itself from a post-communist disaster into a modern economy. Many people have fled the city for the countryside. We heard Mongolia is now in the grip of a gold rush. The miners are known as ninjas. Wow. We're travelling across a vast and practically uninhabited landscape looking for ninja miners, but Mongolia is so sparsely populated that it's like trying to find needles in a haystack. Mongolia has only 2.5 million people, but it's 3 times the size of France. After driving for 16 hours, we finally encountered signs of life. It's what passes for rush hour in Mongolia. We followed, hoping they'd lead us to the mysterious ninjas. I climbed the hill, not knowing what to expect. And there they were, thousands of ninjas digging the riverbed below. Others hacked away at the hills above. After the emptiness of the steppe, this looked like a refugee camp in a war zone. I'm walking between whole families that have, like traditional nomads, up sticks and come to live here in this devastated valley. And some of them are in traditional gear, but some others look as if they were people who just sort of walked out of a shopping mall. I spoke to a miner named Davdorj. What did you do before you became a ninja miner? He told me he'd been gold mining for 6 months. He used to work for the state. He drove a truck for the water department. And then in the post-Soviet era, everything collapsed and he lost his job. He didn't have any choice but to go into ninja mining because he was too young to get a pension. What he's telling me is that these are vertical holes, but they connect up horizontally. So it's like a warren of tunnels down there, held up precariously by earth columns. The rock hacked out of the mines is carried to the riverbed where women sift it for gold. I met Biamba and Oyunchimeg, who told me the strange story of why the miners are known as ninjas. She's using a bowl, which is what gives these miners the name ninjas, because they say that these pans look like the shells on the backs of the cartoon characters, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Bizarre, but that's what they're called. So there's gold there. And she's got one... Ooh, yes. And that's what these women are going for. A few flecks of gold in the bottom of the pan. They told me the work was back-breaking and that each day they had to shovel tons of rock. She says the work is very hard. She has to walk here 7 kilometers and then she walks all the way back at the end of the day. Do you feel that this is a good job, or would you rather be doing something else? She said her options were limited. She says that she doesn't really see any future in mining and she would like to find some sort of other employment, but it's the only thing that she can get. Unlike most people in Mongolia, the Ningja miners have got money to spend, and so there are markets springing up here in the middle of the camp. You can buy a pair of boots, and then just next to a hole that goes down 20 meters that could cause you a serious injury, there's a pool table. On the banks of the Ongin River, I met Dava Suran. He's a local livestock herder who's now become an environmentalist. He told me why he was angry about the gold rush. He told me most rural Mongolians are nomads who rely on herding livestock, and water is scarce in the desert. He says that this river used to be 20 meters across, and it used to supply thousands of livestock and people. And now he says there's no river left, and that is what is causing desertification here on the northern edges of the Gobi. What does your movement want to do about this catastrophe? He says the movement is willing to fight to remove the miners because they want to see the rivers flow again. For 2 days, we followed what was left of the river downstream. On the road, we pass ghost towns of destroyed and looted old buildings. These are the remnants of the communist infrastructure that was destroyed after the collapse of the Soviet system. Some blame Mongolia's expanding deserts on global warming, but on the ground, nomads say mining is to blame for the environmental crisis. It's hard to imagine it, but I'm standing in what the maps say is a permanent river that goes into a lake which is 20 kilometers across. The maps don't refer to reality because both the river and the lake have simply ceased to exist. The only person around was a nomad with a bad hangover. He says the lake dried because the Ongin River dried up, and he himself blames it on the gold mining. When the water was here, there were about 100 families camped around the lake. But now that there isn't any lake at all, they have all moved away. Mongolia has 35 million livestock, but there's not much money in herding. So now we're in the Gobi Desert, and it's a bleak, arid environment. You look 360 degrees on this landscape and you cannot see anybody. Under this desert, the world's second largest gold reserves are waiting to be exploited. We've been driving across the Gobi Desert all day, and we've stopped at a gur tent. And the rules of hospitality in Mongolia are that people will take you in wherever you pitch up. We're sitting in the felt tent of these people who've never had European visitors. They were living a traditional way of life that has scarcely changed in generations. The family relied on herding, but even here their son had spent time in the mines. His mum and dad told me they worried for his safety. Both his parents want him to stay here herding animals and not go back to ninja mining. They've heard that they work with mercury in the mines and they don't want their son to be poisoned. They wanted to set him up with his own livestock so that he could become independent and get married. Ninja mining is seen as a new activity that is destroying tradition. We'd heard that Buddhist monks had set up a temple in a camp a day's drive away. We learned that Mongolians believe mining violates religious laws and threatens misfortune. How do you feel spiritually about mining? She says that she's a very religious person and she always prays before she goes mining to ask forgiveness of the spirits before she damages the earth. She was a widow and also a university graduate, but she lost her job working for the state after communism collapsed. She says that she had to take her kids out of school a year ago because the government stipend that she gets to support her offspring and send them to school is not enough. The senior monk Batbold understood that despite their spiritual fears, the family had no choice but to continue mining. As a Buddhist Lama, what do you believe the consequences of mining for gold are? He explained why mining was so bad. He says that since ancient times the Mongolians avoided gold mining because the earth was sacred, that Mongolia has had a catastrophic break with tradition that is having huge environmental and spiritual consequences. Batbold explained the ninja's dilemma. He recognizes that it is poverty and a lack of jobs in modern Mongolia that drive people into gold mining. But he says that even though they can survive on gold mining, the money that they earn from it is spiritually tainted. The monks took us to the nearest town, where we visited the rundown hospital.
Энэ хоёр хөлөөс энэс доош мэдээгүй. Энэс доош нөгөө мэдээ байхгүй.
This 27-year-old man was injured 5 months ago. He's paralyzed below the waist and he's got terrible bed sores. How did you have your accident? He gambled his life because he was so poor. He says he was injured when a mine shaft collapsed on him. He was mining at night at the time. He says because the shaft was so rich in gold that people were trying to crowd down the hole. What did you do before you went into mining? He used to be a herder. He lived with his mother and younger brother, and they lost all of their livestock, and that's why he was driven into ninja mining. And now he's in a very, very bad way, and he doesn't have a future as a working man. Here, they rely on acupuncture for pain control.
Энэ яг одоогийн нэгдсэн эмнэлэгт энэ аймагт бол ийм боломж байгаа.
The doctor says that they can keep them stable, these patients, but they can't operate on them. The doctor said miners were frequently killed or injured. We wanted to investigate what sort of risks they were taking. Right, well, we've come into the middle of absolutely nowhere. Finding ninja miners out in the desert is a game of chance, but we've come across a very small group of them. Has anyone been hurt in mine collapses around here recently? About a month ago, a mine shaft just like this collapsed. One person was killed and 3 were injured. One man in your team can make about how much money per day? The rock here is so rich in gold ore that on a good day a man can earn £25. When you consider that the annual per capita income is about £500, that's a pretty good wage, but on a bad day they'll earn nothing. Right, there's a lot of dust. All of these diggers are teenagers. They should probably be at school, but instead they're digging down in this cold earth. There are rock falls all the time. To our side there are huge boulders about to come down, just held up by tree trunks. And further down here there's a very narrow passage where these teenage boys are digging. And they're going for a seam of gold about 10 meters down the tunnel in this freezing rock. This has to be a crazy way to make money. But in Mongolian terms, the profits are so high that the dangers make it worthwhile. As you sift through these rocks, every now and again you pick out a little glinting star of gold. But these rocks also contain copper and sometimes silver. One day Mongolia could be rich, and it depends on how well the industry is managed by the government and what impact it has on the environment. The rocks are taken away for crushing. The miners told me they used highly toxic mercury to extract the gold. Right. So he's just showing us the process of how this works. So now he's putting in the mercury. So anything that's metal like gold will stick to the blob of mercury. He's handling it without any protection on his hands. And the pan goes into the oven and the mercury evaporates, leaving pure gold, and there's mercury vapor going up into the tent and into the area where they're serving supper and tea. Why are you doing it by hand? You know that it's poisonous, it's quite dangerous for you. He shrugged off the dangers. It used to be a functioning mill, but the ninja miners are illegal and the government came along and shut it down. And that's why he has to handle the mercury, because he's now doing it on a much smaller scale. There are over 100,000 ninjas, and traditionally the land they mine is communally owned. But now the government is evicting them and selling off concessions to big companies. We've been driving through this pristine steppe landscape, and we know that we've arrived in a mining area because there's piles of rubbish, shacks, slag heaps, general pollution, and we're looking for a big Mongolian company that has allowed us access. Company has a big machine to do their mining, a very, very big machine. It looks like something out of a science fiction movie. Hello? The operations manager, Karolsaran, told me they process 5,000 tons of ore every day. Yes, you can see it, yeah. You can see the gold dust collecting, quite a lot of it. There's even a large nugget there. How long do you think that Mongolia's gold reserves will last? He says that just in this district there are 15 or 16 companies operating, all getting gold licenses. They're obviously at the start of the process of extracting vast reserves which exist in Mongolia, and not only of gold but other metals like copper. And so Mongolia is in the beginning of what is a massive gold rush, tapping into one of the largest reserves in the world. After night fell and a bright moon rose over the Gobi, we discovered miners were working around the clock. So this is the Ningja mining site at night. I spoke to their boss, Dashku, who explained they were in a race against time. They're trying to extract as much gold as possible before the government gives the concession to a big mining company from Canada. At that point, this whole area will be closed to them and security will expel them. He told me that tensions were running high. He says the miners are preparing for a fight, and they say they're not going to budge. He says that he was born in this area. In fact, he was born in a tent in this area, not in a hospital. It's his land. He doesn't want to go. He feels that he's got a right over this part of the land, and he's looking to the government to sort it out for him that he can stay. Mongolia is a new democracy, but ordinary people believe their rulers are corrupt. The ninjas told us they feared they would be cut out of the gold bonanza. They believe that instead, politicians and foreigners will end up hogging the profits.
Are police officers focusing on minor delinquents in order to reach their targets? A new series of The Insider investigates next Friday at 7:30. Well, next on 4, we journey to Crete for a place in the sun.